Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021 at 5 p.m. via video conference. I'm going to read a quick notice to the public. Due to the evolving situation with COVID-19, novel coronavirus, so long as state or local public officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address, publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments are received 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of the comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raised hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website at www.vwd.org/meetings. Okay. Director Pinnock, would you be so kind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure. I'll stand. After me, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Director Pinnock. And I'll go ahead and call a roll call. Let me get my paperwork in order here. Director Pinnock.
Here.
Director Elithart.
Here.
Director Boyd Hodgson. Director Hernandez.
Here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good.
And I am here as well. And so we got the entire team together this evening. Okay. Do we have it, or could I get a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, please?
Moved.
Thank you, Director Boyd. Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Second, Hernandez.
And thank you for the second, Director Hernandez. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Boyd. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Elithart.
Yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. We're at the point in the meeting for public comment, and I did want to just note for the record that we did receive one email from a member of the community, and that email has been shared with the entire board. Has there been any other emails submitted or comments or requests to speak? Glenn?
No emails have been submitted. I did notice that Gail Martin just raised her hand, but then it went back down. So it's back up. So would you like me to let Gail Martin speak?
Yes, please.
Ms. Martin, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. Hello, board members. The reimbursement resolution is a good thing. I want to voice my support for that. The budget being considered today does not include a provision for a new master plan, nor for a new cap fee study, not even in the future projects page. The current master plan and cap fee study are based on data that's now more than a decade old. While it seems nice for developers to know they have a deficient cap fee locked in for a long time, it's not fair for ratepayers who will continue to subsidize development, especially because of the inappropriate incremental cost method currently being used to calculate the rate. The developers aren't required at all to buy in to the system. This will continue to be an issue until the cap fees are recalculated under an appropriate method. The district needs to start using the hybrid approach, which combines an incremental component to pay for assets that accommodate future growth and also includes a buy-in component so the developers pay their share of equity in the system. Again, I ask you, please consider adding a new master plan and a new cap fee study into the 2021-2022 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Okay, any other requests to speak? Glenn, do you see anything?
I do not.
Okay. Moving right along, we have a presentation. You want to kick us off, General Manager Broom?
I will.
Before we move on, I know that we're not supposed to engage the public, but I do have some clarifying questions just to ask if some of those assertions are true. Is it true that the master plan and cap fee study that we're currently using are based on data that are 10 years old?
I'm going to ask James Gumpel to address that.
Director Boyd Hodgins, the master plan, the land use data is from 2014 as of July or June 30th. However, is actually based on the most current land use adoption plans, the general plan from the city of San Marcos. They have not adopted a new land use, and also the most current county general plan, which is I forgot, the 2020 plan or whatever they called it. So since then, there has been no new general plans adopted. So I think I mentioned this one time before. If we were to do a new master plan today, it takes about a 2-year effort, but the foundational information, it hasn't changed in the document. And when we go at some other point, have an opportunity, our development process with our water sewer studies, if a development changes from the master plan, we actually make it whole by evaluating it separately and comparing it to our assumptions.
So we're basing it on 2014 data, but you're saying that we're waiting on the city and the county to come up with a new land use before we can adopt. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. So in other words, the foundation of the master plan is the city and the counties, the land use agencies' general adopted plans. The cities and the counties have not adopted a new general plan, and so our current master plan, and if we were to do a new master plan, would have the same foundational documents and the same foundational information.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. Okay, Director or General Manager Broom, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Sanella. So tonight we're recognizing the accomplishment of one of our newest employees. So Allison Fretwell is an engineering services assistant in our development services group within the engineering department. And she joined us on April 5th. So she's been on the job for less than 2 months. In Allison's interview, she mentioned that she was looking for a career change and wanted to get into the field of engineering in the water industry. She has a BA degree in advertising, and she's currently working towards her BS degree in civil engineering, which is what I got my bachelor's in as well. And prior to joining us, she obtained her drinking water operator grade 1 certificates for both water treatment and water distribution. They're known as the T1 and D1 certificates. She also has her CWEA Lab Analyst 1 certification, and she served time as a water quality internship with the San Alejo Lagoon Foundation. But tonight we're recognizing Allison for recently receiving her certification as a grade 2 water distribution operator. It's called a D2 from the State Water Resources Control Board. And these certificates aren't even required for Allison's position. And I think this really demonstrates her commitment to her new career. So I wanted to give my congratulations to Allison and let her know we're really happy to have her on the team. And for somebody who's been here for only 2 months and for me to talk this long, so that's a big accomplishment. So thanks, Allison. And Allison has joined us tonight. So if the directors have anything they want to say to her or any questions to ask of her, she's just can't wait to engage the board. So
Allison, congratulations and thank you for being so proactive in your professional development and getting your certificate here. If we were having our regular live meetings, I would be coming down from the behind the dais right now, and we'd be snapping pictures and actually handing you a certificate. But unfortunately, we can't do that right now. But hopefully, Glenn will be giving that to you if he hasn't already. So, congratulations! Thank you for all your efforts and making our water district the best it can be for our customers. And I'll open it up to my colleagues if they would like to say anything. Director Hernandez.
Yes, Allison, good job. Keep up the good work. My son-in-law's in the business, working for a lesser water district just down the street. But keep up the good work. You're on your way, particularly in the engineering department. We really need your help. So keep up the good work, and you can take over James's job in the future.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. This has been a real pleasure. I appreciate it.
And Director Hernandez, or Director Boyd Hodgson.
And I just want to echo the comments that have been said before. Congratulations, Ms. Fretwell. Way to go.
Thank you.
What a lot of things that you're accomplishing. And we hope that we continue to make Vallecitos a great place for you to work and grow your career. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate Allison. And
Thank you.
I've also heard that civil engineering is a noble profession. That's what they tell me. So, so go forth and do good things.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to a long career here. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. We're going to move right along to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar.
I'll move approval.
Okay. And I'll second.
Go ahead.
Nope, we got it. Thank you. We got a motion to approve the consent calendar by Director Eltharp and a second by Director Pinnock. Any questions or items that any directors wanted to discuss further? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Director Eltharp.
Yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. That takes us up to a public hearing, which is something that we don't do every night. So there's some special rules for that. So bear with me. Okay. So we're going to move on to item 2.1, which is a public hearing for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And this is the time and place for a hearing to receive public comments on the district's draft 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. General Manager Prum, will you please provide us some details?
Yeah, so this is a public hearing to receive public comments regarding the district's proposed urban water management plan. And the urban water management plan is a state required document. It's due every 5 years in years ending in 0 or 5. I know this is a 21, but it's a 2020 document that we're proposing. And it has to be submitted by July 1st of those years. And the purpose of the urban water management plan is to analyze the district's water supply compared to the projected demands over the planning horizon. And this is done by looking at normal years as well as single and multiple dry years, which increase water consumption. And one of the resulting findings of the urban water management plan is that it provides guidance to set conservation goals and policies for the district. Our urban water management plan is dependent on the Water Authority's urban water management plan, since we receive 100% of our water from them either directly or indirectly. And once we received their numbers, we were able to perform the analysis for the district and for doing ours. So for the 2020 urban water management plan, the district hired the consulting firm HDR to put the report together. And Leanne Hammond from HDR is joining us today to provide a presentation on the urban water management plan. So Leanne, the stage is yours.
I will show the presentation.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, all right. So this is an overview of your urban water management plan, your 2020 urban water management plan. As General Manager Prum mentioned, it is being submitted in 2021. However, it is your 2020 plan. And Some background on the urban water management plan. As you heard, it does provide information on your existing and projected sources of water supply, your existing projected water demands. It also does a little analysis on your water service and water supply reliability, your demand management measures, and water shortage contingency planning. The urban water management plan looks at a minimum 20-year planning horizon. However, we have the information, and most agencies do decide to extend that horizon over 25 years through the year 2045. And we do look at both normal year, single year, dry year, and multiple dry year supply and demand scenarios. Updates for your urban water management plan are required by the Department of Water Resources every 5 years. The last few cycles, DWR has extended the submittal deadline through June or July of the following year. And so this year, the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan has a submittal deadline of July 1st to DWR. As we prepared your 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, we did follow DWR's guidebook for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plans. Some of the notable additions or changes in this 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, either dictated by changes in water code or just dictated by the cycle of the plan. There is a new drought risk assessment that is included in terms of water supply reliability, and we look at water supply reliability over 5 consecutive dry years for your service area. Your 2020 plan is also going to document your compliance with the SBX 7-7 per capita water use target that was established in 2010, I believe. The reported energy intensity is a requirement of the 2020 plan. 2015, it was an optional or voluntary reporting, but it is required in this plan, and so we've included it. We also include a seismic risk assessment of water supplies within this plan, which primarily references hazard mitigation plans, emergency response plans, either for your district or within the general San Diego County. The 2020 Urban Water Management Plan also includes what is called a lay description for each major section of the plan. It is a quick summary in non-technical terms that we have included as kind of an executive summary at the upfront portion of the Urban Water Management Plan. In 2020, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan is now a standalone document that can be adopted separately from your Urban Water Management Plan and also updated more frequently than the 5-year Urban Water Management Plan cycles. The Water Shortage Contingency Plan does include 6 standard levels of drought response, and we've included it as an appendix to your Urban Water Management Plan, as well as a separate standalone document for reference and adoption. In addition to those changes, this cycle, we prepared some information to show your reduced reliance on Delta supplies. The Delta Plan Policy WRP1 identifies the urban water management plans as the tool to demonstrate consistency with this policy. While the district purchases water from the San Diego County Water Authority, the San Diego County Water Authority also purchases imported water from Metropolitan Water District, and so the potential supplies to your district from the Delta watershed come through the San Diego County Water Authority or Metropolitan Water District. Your district's reliance on the Delta watershed through your county water authority supplies have decreased compared to the baseline, which was set as the 2010 baseline for supplies and demands, based on your contributions through desalinated purchases and your contributions for recycled water as future supply projections. The Urban Water Management Guidebook does state that water suppliers should include this information as part of their 2015 and 2020 urban water management plans to demonstrate consistency with the policy. And so the district will be amending your 2015 urban water management plan using this information as an appendix that just goes at the end of the 2015 plan. And it's also going to be included as an appendix in your 2020 urban water management plan. These next few slides are going to just hit the major sections or components of your urban water management plan. We go through a section that describes the plan preparation and the process. Vallecitos Water District is a retail water agency, and you do prepare an individual urban water management plan. This is one of the tables from the plan. It just notes number of municipal connections or service connections that were documented as 2020 connections, and then the volume of water supplied in million gallons. Vallecitos has also participated as part of a regional alliance with Limonene Water District, Rincon Municipal Water District, and San Dieguito Water District. And the regional alliance allows each individual water supplier to combine your individual gallon per capita per day targets into a regional water use target for compliance. And I do have some tables that show both your individual district compliance with that target as well as the regional alliance target. The system description section of your plan goes over the general description of your potable water system and the land uses that comprise your service area. It also is where we document your existing 2020 populations as well as the population forecast that's going to be used for the plan. Population forecast is based on the San Diego Association of Governments, SANDAG, Series 14 growth forecast that we receive from SANDAG based on your service area boundaries. And the estimated 2020 population for your service area, 105,741 people, is what we use in the Urban Water Management Plan analysis and to document compliance with the SBX 7-7 targets. This is a table summary of both your 2020 water use for potable water, as well as the demand projections through 2045 that we've included in your urban water management plan. Again, everything is in million gallons, and it is listed out by different use categories as well as the documented water loss through your AWWA water loss audits. In addition to the existing water use, we also include the potential recycled water uses that you are anticipating to include in your system as part. It's information that we've pulled from projects that you are looking at implementing, as well as the regional recycled water facilities plan and information from your most recent water master plan. We do have a section in your urban water management plan for the SBX 7-7 baseline and each interim and 2020 target. SBX 7-7 did require water agencies to reduce their per capita water use 20% by the year 2020. And as part of the 2010 Urban Water Management Plan, your district developed those water use baselines and per capita water use targets for 2015 and 2020. Your last 2015 Urban Water Management Plan did show that you met and actually exceeded your water use target for 2015. And similarly, your district has met and exceeded the per capita water use target for 2020. Your 2020 target was 159 gallons per person per day, and your actual 2020 water use was about 125 gallons per person per day. We also shared this with the agencies that are part of the Regional Alliance and got their per capita water use. As you can see, everyone has done a good job. Everyone's met their water use targets. So this also means that as a regional alliance, the alliance group has also met their water use target for 2020. Your water supplies do come fully through the County Water Authority. You recently executed 2 water purchase agreements that are not imported water supplies from the County Water Authority, but they are supplied through Water Authority sales agreements or connections. And that does include the commitment to purchase at least 1,140 million gallons of desalinated water, as well as a commitment to purchase at least 900 million gallons per year of water from Limonene treatment plant. During the supply reliability analysis, based on your local, regional supplies and the imported water from San Diego County Water Authority, there is sufficient water to meet all of your anticipated demands under normal year and single dry year, as well as multiple dry year scenarios. And we also wanted to note in your urban water management plan that you are actively planning for the use of recycled water in the future as a way of creating a new local supply or a reduction in potable water needs. As part of the Regional Recycled Water Facilities Master Plan, that number is identified as up to 771 million gallons per year. Some of the future water supply projects that we've noted in your urban water management plan include the ones on this list: expansion of Meadowlark's water recycling facility, purchasing recycled water from Escondido's Hale Avenue Resource Recovery Facility, and participation in the North County One Water program, which includes advanced purification at 2 water reclamation facilities. In addition to that, Vallecitos is looking at additional water supply projects, including more purchases from the city of Escondido, expanded capacity from the County Water Authority, treated water purchases from Oceanside's waste plant, groundwater supply from San Marcos groundwater basin, and direct potable reuse out of the Meadowlark water recycling facility. Director Boyd Hodgson, do you want me to address your question now?
Sure, thank you. So I just have a question, and it's great that it seems that our district has and the region has met the target. It looks like we're under, we're at 125 and the target was 159.
Mm-hmm.
Had we not met that target, what would have been the consequences? And where would those consequences, how would those consequences have been meted out?
I think one of the direct consequences to not meeting your water use target would have affected your eligibility for water grant funding for future projects. I'm not sure if there would be any fines associated with not meeting the target. Usually, most agencies' concerns are their eligibility for grant funding or water project funding from the state or from water programs. And so that was one of the drivers for meeting the water use target. Moving on to your water supply reliability assessment, we looked at your water supply and demand assessment under a normal year condition, a single dry year condition, and multiple dry year conditions. And the drought risk assessment did look at 5 consecutive dry years to determine if you have sufficient supplies to meet all of your demands. The normal year supply and demand comparison is presented this way to show that, when we look at your existing demands and your demand projections, we didn't factor in directly conservation efforts or conservation savings. When the San Diego County Water Authority prepares their information for member agencies and prepares what they anticipate being available in terms of water supplies to their member agencies, they do incorporate expected water savings and conservation efficiencies in those numbers. And so the supply totals in this table show what the County Water Authority is anticipating to provide to Vallecitos Water District, your anticipated demands from 2025 through 2045. It does show a shortage in supplies, which we anticipate you will be able to make up through both active and passive conservation efforts so that you have sufficient water supplies to meet all of your demands.
Leanne, if I can interrupt, this is General Manager Prum. So the board may recall that in the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, there was some confusion by the public regarding these numbers. So, and I think it was interpreted that when some of the readers of the Urban Water Management Plan, they read halfway through this chart and they saw that there was the demand was greater than the supplies, and they thought that there was a problem. So I just want to make sure the board knows that this information needs to be looked at in its totality. You need to look at all of the document, including the active and passive conservation, which clearly shows that we don't anticipate a water supply shortage over the entire planning horizon. So I just want to make sure that was clear, because it was quite a controversy when I was first coming on board and a little before I started with the district. I just want to make sure that we aren't heading for similar concerns going forward.
And
So
absolutely,
James, Leanne, if you want to add to that.
Thank you. So just to kind of add a little bit to that, we did add additional notes at the bottom here within the tables to kind of specify that, because the information was shown correctly in the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, and many of the agencies actually had to take the conservation numbers out of their numbers in the edits from comments from the state. And our information went through the state without comments. However, we did add the note to clarify. Also, in the 2015 Master Urban Water Management Plan, it showed a number that was close to 35% conservation. This number obviously is much smaller, in more in the 10 to 12% range. Also, with that being said, this number that we're getting from CWA is not the CWA supply. It's what they anticipate. And you could see probably in the next table is that as our demand goes up, the supply is there to meet it.
Yes. So this table right here is what they anticipate needing to provide to your district under a normal year condition. Under single and multiple dry years, they both have the same conclusions. Then I don't know if the note is shown here. What we did is we looked at multiple dry years through 2045 using a similar methodology that the County Water Authority prepared for their demands and supplies under single and multiple dry years. There isn't an expectation that demands will increase under dry conditions, mostly due to irrigation or just additional demands. And so we adjusted your demand projections accordingly. The County Water Authority's Urban Water Management Plan, a note might be here. And this is also the drought risk assessment, which was also a 5-year look at water supply reliability from the County Water Authority. The County Water Authority's Urban Water Management Plan does make the assumption and the statement that due to their supplies and their storage and their availability, they anticipate being able to meet the additional demand requirements of their member agencies under all drought conditions, I think is how they phrased it. So they are projecting available supplies to meet your demands or their member agency demands above and beyond what is considered to be an average normal year demand. So under all drought conditions, a single dry year or multiple dry years, the County Water Authority does have sufficient supplies for their member agencies to provide you with a supply so that you can meet all of your demands under your drought conditions. So that is the conclusion that we have put into your urban water management plan for multiple dry year scenarios. The water shortage contingency plan, while it is a separate document and a separate plan, there is a section within your urban water management plan where we do lay out the components of your water shortage contingency plan. The plan does address your drought planning, your water shortage response levels and actions, any management of water allocations during a declared drought or water emergency. Some of the components of that water shortage contingency plan do include a new annual water demand and supply assessment that is reported to the state, which is a requirement that will start in July of 2022. And it also includes a definition of the new water shortage levels. Your district's urban water management plan and your water shortage contingency plan do follow the 6 standard shortage levels, which start at a standard operating condition of a 10% reduction, and then it increases to greater than a 50% reduction in an extreme drought or emergency action. These are the major components that are within your water shortage contingency plan. It notes the restrictions and prohibitions on end users during a drought or when shortage response actions are required. It does note a drought response plan for the district, which includes actions that correspond to each of those 6 standard levels of shortage. It notes the penalties and charges under, for violations during a drought or water emergency. It includes how the district will determine water shortage reductions and a summary of your reduction methods that you use to maintain demand reductions. There's a section on any revenue and expenditure impacts, how it impacts the finances of the district, some catastrophic supply interruption planning, which relies heavily on the county water authorities, strategies and methodologies. And then it also notes that the water shortage contingency plan does get adopted and submitted as a separate plan. And then finally, we note in the final section of your urban water management plan, when notices went out to your cities and counties as required by DWR and the water code, we have a public hearing, which is today, June 2nd. We plan to adopt the urban water management plan at your board meeting on June 16th. And then we plan to submit your urban water management plan and the required documentation to DWR by June 1st so that we get it in before that July 1st deadline. And that's it. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
Well, thank you, Leanne. Wonderful presentation. Appreciate it. Does any member of the board of directors have any questions for staff or Leanne?
I do.
Okay, Director Pennock.
So, I mean, wow, Leanne, thank you so much. That's 350 pages all summed up really nicely. I'm just curious. I mean, the content is there. I mean, you've done that. And I don't know if you can answer these questions or not, but how long does it take you to put a plan like this together? How long have you been working on this?
Well, we knew this was coming. Rob Scholl used to prepare your urban water management plans, and with his departure, we were happy to jump in and help Vallecitos out.
Okay, so that was my question. So this is your first year doing it for us, for Vallecitos?
This is my first year doing it for you. However, I think 2 plans ago, I did a peer review of your urban water management plan, but you typically do prepare your urban water management plans in-house. And okay. I have been working on urban water management plans, I think, since 2010. So they do come around every 5 years. So I don't work on them constantly, but every cycle I manage to prepare a few. And then my team has prepared, I think, 3 in this cycle.
Okay, so that's what I was just trying to, okay, so you came on, okay, usually we do this in-house. That just seems like a ton of hours. And then
I think we started on your plan either January or February of this year.
Okay, and that, I guess that answers the other question. I mean, there's a ton of just access to numbers and data. Is it just open book? I mean, are you just able to, I mean, did we just open the books and here you go look at everything? Is that how that works? I mean, how did you get access? I mean, is there just, how did you do that?
Well, we know what data we typically need to prepare a plan. And so we put together a data request log and we sent it over to James and his team. And we tracked what we got and what we still needed and clarifications. And it was a little bit of an iterative process. We did rely on your water master plan for some of the information and the county water authorities urban water management plans, some of their drafts for information as your main wholesale supplier. But we requested information from you, and your team, James's team, was very helpful in getting us what we needed.
Okay, so that's some back and forth. Well, thank you, Leanne. Thank you, James. Thank you for helping us comply with DWR. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Director Boyd Hodgson. Thank
you. Just want to echo the compliment that Director Pennock paid. This is a tremendous volume of information, and I appreciate that you consolidated it into a digestible presentation. Thank you, and thank you for all of your work on this. I think we as a board approved farming this out earlier in the year. Am I correct in remembering that? Thank you, very well done. I noticed that in what I found really interesting was one of the parts where it says the alternative water sources that we're exploring. And I noticed that there wasn't anything specifically about stormwater recapture there. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, if that's something that Vallecitos that we're not going to consider, or if it's something that just didn't make it into the proposal because it's not on the immediate horizon. Thank you.
I could probably address that question, Director Boyd Hodgins. So we actually looked at the stormwater recapture with the current rules, with the regional board and what they want is really the regional board is looking for agencies to capture the first flush, which is basically when it first rains and all the soot and oils come off the road. They want that captured. But the problem is our treatment, the technology we use in treatment right now, it would ruin our treatment plants because a lot of our treatment processes are biological and petroleum products don't mix well with microbes, as you probably know better than I do. So that kind of went aside, but with the North County Recycle Water Coalition, there is a stormwater capture component that's still in there. As the state progresses and the rules change on how we view stormwater, we anticipate there may be opportunities in the future. But at this point, there wasn't anything that was planned, definitely nothing verifiable that to put in the plan.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Comments from the board? Okay, seeing none. Does any member of the public have any questions or comments at this time? I see one hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Hunsaker has his hand raised. If you'd like me to enable his microphone.
Yes, please.
Mr. Hunsaker, go ahead. That didn't work. Try it again. Mr. Hunsaker, can you hear us? You may need to unmute your microphone, Mr. Hunsaker. Yeah, I don't know what's... Patrick, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Is there anything you can do to help Mr. Hunsaker's microphone be enabled?
Nope. He doesn't have a microphone. It shows on the participants. He doesn't have a microphone or a camera.
Okay. I don't know what to do with that, President Sanella. Yeah.
Okay. If you can hear us, Mr. Hunsaker, if you could perhaps reach out to the district and our general manager Pruitt directly offline when you have an opportunity this week, and certainly share your feedback and comments. And General Manager Pruitt, if you'll share those with the whole board when you receive those, I'd appreciate it. I think that's probably the best we can do under these circumstances.
Yeah, and I will. And as a reminder, we're not approving the urban water management plan or the water shortage contingency plan tonight. This is the public hearing for those. So we can still incorporate comments, at a limited time because we have to get the board packet ready for June 16th. But if Mr. Hunsaker can get his comments in soon, we'll certainly address them.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that have questions or comments at this time? If so, simply just raise your hand on the computer, of course.
I don't see anybody.
Okay. There being no other persons wishing to address the board, the hearing is closed. And then I'll just follow up with my colleagues. Does any member of the board of directors have any further questions or discussion at this time? I don't see any. Okay.
Hunsaker has his hand up again.
Should we give it another try?
I'll try
He just muted his microphone, so he has a microphone, but he muted it. Now it's unmuted, but we still can't hear him, so it's not
Can
working.
you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can hear you, Mr. Hunsaker.
Okay. I've got a dog that apparently rooted around behind the computer. I've been following a little bit on the BIA, and they were suggesting that this would be the first year they start putting in limitations from drought, that Lake Mead is going to be lowering its levels to below trigger points. And the urban plan talks about eliminating needs for delta water, but it doesn't really seem to address the question of whether or not the Colorado River water, which is our main source, may be limited. Can you give me any information as to your expectation as to whether or not mandatory cutbacks are going to come into effect and how these are attended to inside the urban plan? Thank you.
Leanne, did you have anything to add to that, or James? Otherwise, I have something I could add.
So I could add a little bit. The urban water management plan, and Leanne, please correct me if I'm wrong here, has a resiliency of the supply component analysis that's done on the San Diego, at least it was done on the San Diego County Water Authority's urban water management plan for their supplies. And I believe there's, I don't know if it's really a sensitivity analysis, but there was analysis done on how reliable the supplies are and also the diversity of the supplies themselves. It shows that in general, the supplies are fairly reliable. And this is kind of where I need help, Leanne. And obviously there is a drought contingency plan and also basically a 6-step or 6-phase plan. And the district will be bringing basically a new drought ordinance through the P3 committee back to the board, because our current drought plan is, I believe, a 4-phase plan.
Yes, and the County Water Authority's urban water management plan, when they look at their supply reliability, including waters from their wholesale supplier and Metropolitan Water District, they do account for what they are going to be allocated during drought conditions or dry years. And so they've built that into their plan reliability and their supply and demand comparison, also including, their regional supplies and storage supplies. And so that's the information that we distill down into the Vallecitos urban water management plan in terms of supply reliabilities during drought conditions. So in terms of the reduction on the reliance of Delta waters, that's been included in this plan. There haven't been mandates on how to address any potential impacts from the Colorado River as part of this planning cycle.
So I'll add to that. One of the things that the Water Authority has done a really good job at is securing and diversifying their supplies. So when they entered into that agreement with the Imperial Irrigation District, which was the largest agriculture to urban water transfer in the country, it provided the Water Authority with access to a very highly reliable supply of Colorado River water. And in fact, it's one of the highest priority supplies on the river. So the Water Authority believes that even if there are cutbacks along the Colorado River, other agencies with lower priority waters will be the first to feel those impacts, and that the Water Authority supplies are pretty secure, at least through the planning horizon, because that's, I believe, the water transfer agreement with the IID goes through 2047, which is beyond the horizon of the urban water management plan.
Great. Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Hunsaker, and thank you, team, for responding accordingly. Just one, before we wrap things up, any other questions or discussion from the board? Okay. And Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't need any action on this tonight, right?
There's no action. Just be prepared to see us on June 16th.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you again, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Leanne.
Okay, moving on to action items. Item 3.1, Vallecitos Water District recommended fiscal year 21-22 budget. General Manager.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. So the item before the board is the approval of the 21-22 budget. And this is the culmination of about 6 months of staff work, numerous finance committee meetings, a board workshop, a follow-up board meeting item, just our last meeting regarding the budget. I think you'll find this to be a very prudent, fiscally sound budget that we're presenting to you tonight. Although this budget is higher than last year's budget, virtually all of the increases are due to increased water purchase costs, increases from our regional wastewater treatment partner, which is Encina, and increases to things like electricity, chemicals, and other materials and supplies over which we have no control over. This budget does at the same time, it addresses the district's single most expensive outstanding liability, which is our CalPERS unfunded accrued liability. And as you know, this is the kind of a debt, if you want to call it that we're paying 7% on. So we're addressing the most expensive liability that we have. So Wes is going to lead you through an abbreviated version of the budget presentation, abbreviated compared to what you've seen before. In the presentation, we will address the impact the budget will have on water and wastewater rates. But I want the board to remember two things before we start. One is the board is only being asked to approve the FY22 budget. So for planning purposes, we do include an analysis through extended horizon, like 5-year analysis. So look at capital projects over that time frame and debt and other things, but the board's only being asked to approve a 1-year budget here. And secondly, we're not asking the board to approve rates. And we'll touch briefly on rates today, but this is not a rate hearing, so just want to keep that in mind. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Wes.
Good evening, President Sanella, members of the board. Tonight, we will be presenting on the recommended budget for fiscal year 2022. It has been a long, fun process, and I think that staff, the Finance Committee, and the board have done a great job preparing a sound budget for fiscal year 2022 and a solid financial plan for the future. That being said, I have to apologize because this presentation is going to be almost an exact repeat of the May 19th presentation, and I may just bore you to death. But I did spice up my background a little bit and remodel my office, so that should make it a little more exciting. So this may be the last time we see the budget party page, at least for this budget season, so I had to give it its due here and show it real quick before we move on to the agenda. And as General Manager Prum mentioned, this will be an abbreviated presentation, so I'll go through and I'll try to minimize the number discussion and summarize as much as I can. So in the agenda, we're going to talk first about the budget process and calendar, and I'll do a quick recap of that. Then we'll go over the operating expenses for both water and sewer. After that, we'll talk about salaries and benefits. Then Mike will present on water sales, purchases, and sewer revenue. Then we'll talk about the capital budget. And then we'll discuss the CalPERS UAL funding. Next, we'll talk about the reserve balances. And finally, staff's recommendations. So jumping into the budget process and calendar and skipping through, the Finance Committee met 4 times during the budget process in preparing the draft budget. And then on May 6th, the full board met in a workshop to discuss the draft budget update and to discuss the CalPERS UAL options. Then on May 19th, we went over the draft proposed budget and we went over the PERS scenarios. And since we have incorporated those, the board requested items, including the PERS scenarios, into the budget, we revised it and refined it, and we brought an excellent recommended budget for consideration tonight. Oh, don't miss my little white guy. I want to go slow through that. So this is page 2 of the budget, and this is exactly the same thing as you saw in the May 19th presentation. None of the numbers have changed. The board gave clear direction on addressing the PERS UAL, and then $2,595,000 was already included in the draft proposed budget. So nothing here has changed. The fiscal year 2022 budget still totals $93,445,000. And as General Manager Prum mentioned, the board is only considering adoption of the fiscal year 2022 budget. We will show a 5-year and 10-year plan, but it's just a 1-year budget being approved. And looking at this, the top 5 items are reserve funded. So we'll first discuss the operating items down bottom. And water operations are budgeted at $12.9 million or 14% of the total budget. And this slide that we saw at the last meeting as well is page 10 of your budget. And the total water operating expenses are budgeted at $45.6 million. And I can't stress this enough, so I will show it every time probably. 72% of our water operating expenses are from water purchases, or $32.7 million. So anytime there's a rate increase from the Water Authority, it has a major impact on our budget and the need to raise rates. So next slide shows a summary of page 11 of the budget, and the details are on pages 12 through 14 for the departments. And we can see here that the total budgeted operating expenses are budgeted to increase by $2,855,000, mainly as a result of an increase in water purchases, but Mike will be presenting on the water purchases, sales, and revenues. So I'll let him discuss that and I won't steal his thunder. The only major changes to the operating expenses otherwise are an increase in operations of $87,000. And that's for a proactive meter replacement program that we are proposing in the meters department. Also worth noting is that the G&A budget here, I know there's no change, but it does include $30,000 for Bill Dean programs. And those were recommended by the P3 committee, and they're educational programs such as the water management internship and the Earth Smart Actions. So we have included $30,000, and that's on page 32 of the budget as well. So back to the home page. Next, we'll talk about sewer operations. And I'm going a little bit faster, but if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask questions. Trying to go a little quicker because last time I know we set a record for a board meeting time. So I'm trying to abbreviate that a little bit. But sewer operations are budgeted at $13.8 million for this fiscal year, or 15% of the total budget. And this slide is page 20 of your budget and shows the sewer operating expenses broken down by category or component. And 47% of the $13.8 million budgeted for sewer operating expenses is for treatment costs. And those costs are for the Encino Wastewater Authority as well as the Metal Arc Treatment Plant. And this slide is a summary of page 21 of your budget. And the details are on pages 22 through 24 by department. And we can see here that the revenues are budgeted to increase for sewer by $821,000. And that correlates with the water increase or water sales increase, which is mainly due to COVID. But again, Mike will be discussing that, so I won't go into detail. And the budgeted operating expenses for sewer, they're budgeted to increase by $462,000, mainly as a result of an increase in treatment costs. And the majority of that is due to an increase in Encina's costs of $294,000. The other major change is that support is budgeted to increase by $215,000. And that's as a result of the energy management, mainly as a result of the energy management study and the North County Water Recycle Water Coalition that engineering is preparing. So next, I want to look at salaries and benefits. And again, none of these numbers have changed, but salaries and benefits is budgeted to increase by $107,000 or 1% for fiscal year 2022. Benefits are budgeted to increase by $100,000, mainly as a result of increase in group insurance costs of $163,000. And finally, even while budgeting for a COLA, budgeting to fund the assistant general manager position for 9 months and normal steps and increases, we're still showing a modest increase in the budget of only $207,000 or 1.3% in salaries and benefits in total. This is important because we pride ourselves in budgeting in general and keeping costs at a minimum, as low as possible. And we've done a great job with this, I feel, for salaries and benefits as well. And I'd like to show some of the proactive initiatives that have been taken. And first, I'll do that by looking at the.
Hey, Wes, before you transition to kind of the next slide, I do have a hand up. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, President Snella. Wes, can you just confirm that the assistant general manager position is budgeted, as well as there was one other position that we had talked about, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get the title correct, maybe the account associate, or the person who is responsible for following up to make sure that our customers are paying for the capacity that they should be paying for.
So, and I'll handle that, Director Boyd Hodgson. The accounts analyst position is not included in here, and staff feels that the appropriate way to do that is to do work with existing staff to scope the issue. Because right now we don't have a game plan, and I don't want to hire a person without knowing the game plan. So we're going to spend next year developing that plan, analyzing the issue to the extent that we can with the existing resources that we have, and if it appears prudent, we'll include the funding for that position in the next year's budget after we go through probably the finance committee. So we do have some existing.
Funded in the last presentation that we saw? Was it funded in that presentation?
It was not.
Okay.
Yeah, so nothing's changed from what was presented last time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the next slide, this slide shows budget to actual for salaries over the last 5 years. And the bottom half shows the salaries, the top half shows the benefits. And this really shows how we've been able to keep salaries and benefits steady or consistent, with salaries only ranging from $9.7 to $10.3 million over 5 years. and benefits only ranging from $5.7 to $6.3 million over the last 5 years or so. It really demonstrates that we've been able to keep them low and steady. But I want to break this down further and take a look at some of the proactive initiatives that have been taken by staff based on guidance from the board. And to do this, first we have to look at staffing levels. And since 2015, or from 2015 to 2022, the number of full-time equivalents of the district has gone down from about 116 to 109. And we can see as a result of scrutinizing positions as they become vacant, we've actually kind of left them vacant for a while, and this has resulted in savings to the district as well. But the major changes are that in 2017, we were able to eliminate 3.5 positions. And then in 2018, we eliminated another 4 positions. And we were able to do this as people retired, or staff retired or left the district. We were able to absorb this workload through technology, increased efficiencies, and other allocations of duties. And these eliminations of positions and vacancies have saved the district hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. And I'll take a look at that a little more in the next few slides. So based on these initiatives and by eliminating positions, by eliminating 3.5 positions in 2017, the district is saving $254,000 in salaries and $66,000 in benefits every year for a total of $320,000 annually. In 2018, by eliminating 4 positions, the district is saving $309,000 in salary and $78,000 in benefits for a total savings of $387,000 annually. And this amount is cumulative to the 2017 savings. And besides just having vacant positions and eliminating positions, the staff has also taken a couple of major proactive initiatives in regards to benefits with guidance from the board. And the first one was to pre-fund the other post-employment benefits, or the OPEB, by funding it in a trust. And by doing so, we're able to pay the retiree medical cost directly from the trust. And that actually reduces the operating expenses for those medical costs. And for this year, those savings resulting from that are $412,000. The costs for medical benefits, as you can imagine, are increasing every year. And by 2026, that savings is estimated at $475,000 a year. The next major initiative that the district has taken with guidance from the board has been to pre-fund the PERS unfunded accrued liability. And by pre-funding that, not only are we saving about $17.7 million in interest costs, we're also able to reduce the required annual payment for the UAL. And initially, the required UAL for 2022 was $1,557,000, and now it's $744,000, which results in an $813,000 savings. And that amount is estimated to be $1,018,000 next year in fiscal year 2023. So in total, based on proactive initiatives and with guidance from the board, our total savings for salaries is $563,000 every year. And for benefits, $1,369,000 a year, for a total annual savings of $1,932,000. And that amount is increasing every year. So that's the presentation on salaries and benefits. Next, we'll go back to the homepage, and Mike will be presenting on water purchases, water sales, and sewer revenues.
Thank you, Wes. Good evening, President Sanella, members of the board. Wes, if you can advance the slide. So today we'll be reviewing water and sewer revenues along with water purchases. We'll look at the water sales by customer type and volume. We'll review the projected water revenues and the assumed rate increases. We'll show a sales sensitivity analysis of what would happen if we sold more or less water. We'll show a detail of our water purchases by source, including some additional desal water we can get. And then finally, we'll look at the sewer revenues. And Wes, if you can advance. So this is a chart that just shows our volumetric sales by customer type. And again, just as a reminder, residential customers make up about 2/3 of our sales. Irrigation and agriculture customers about 1/4 of our sales, and the remaining 11% are sales to commercial and industrial. So we're projecting sales of about 14,120 acre feet, which is about 1% more than our current year projected actual. Wes, if you can advance one more. So total water revenues are budgeted at about $46.5 million, and they're made up of commodity charges of $31.2 million, ready to serve, which is our fixed charges at $14.3 million, and other charges of 1 million. And I just wanted to highlight kind of that fixed charges account for about 31% of our revenue. And that's to cover a lot of our fixed costs. So how are customer rates affected by our projected revenue? Well, quickly, I just want to show that in our current fiscal year, we are not projecting, for this budget, we are not projecting any rate increases for the water, and nominal rate increase of about 3.5% to 4% through 2026. And I'm going to bring sewer in right now, Wes, if you hit one more. Even though I'm not kind of reviewing sewer at the moment, but sewer, we're also projecting no rate increases for 2022. And in the future, the budget contained estimated increases of about 2.5% to 3%. So what does that mean, the overall customer? And if Wes, you can advance one more. So obviously with zero water and zero sewer increases for 2022, the overall increase for 2022 would also be zero. And I just want to make sure that the increase, when you say 3.5% increase, Wes, if you can highlight over 2023 and just circle around that. If you look at 2023, the 3.5% and 2.5%, I want to make sure that you don't add them together and say, oh, okay, that's a 6% increase. It's 3.5% on the water portion, 2.5% on the sewer portion. So the overall net increase would be about 3.2%. So for the next 4 fiscal years from 2023 to 2026, we're estimating an average of, a range of about 3.2 to 3.7%. And as General Manager Perlman discussed, we are not approving rates today, and we're only looking at the current fiscal year, or the 2021-2022 fiscal year. So Wes, if you go one more. So first,
hey Mike, can I just pause you for a second? I have a hand up by Director Elithart, please.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you, President Snow. Mike, I'm since I've been here on the board, I haven't seen a sewer rate increase, I think, in 6 years. What's the reason for that? Did we do a very large increase back in history? Maybe too much of a rate increase?
I agree with you. Since I've been here, I think we've had one sewer increase the first year I was here, and I don't remember that being a large increase. I think it's just that our reserve levels are at a point where we didn't need to raise rates. And I don't know if Wes or General Manager Perlman, if you had anything else to add on that.
So yeah, so has our reserve levels gone down with time? I don't remember.
So the only thing I would add to that is it's a combination of things. One being controlling the cost for sewer, and two, the CIP costs. So we have a need for several CIP costs, and we're working to get them done, but we haven't been able to complete them as quickly as we thought we would. So I think it's a combination of those two factors, really.
So we put off some major capital projects.
Yeah, and you'll see that when we get to CIP, that the majority of our CIP costs are in sewer. So we'll get to them, and eventually there'll be a need for it.
Okay, thanks.
So all of these numbers are based on our assumptions for demand and the pass-through increases from the Water Authority. And if Wes, if you can advance one more. So in addition, we do a sensitivity analysis. What if we sold 10% more water? What if our sales went down 10%? So just to show you that the net impact on our revenues, on our reserves, if sales were to be cut by about 10%, the net impact would be about $1.7 million to the red. And if sales for some reason were to exceed our expectations by 10%, it'd be about 1.8% to the green or positive. So I just wanted to kind of show you the kind of the bookends, what would happen if demand was increased or decreased. So Wes, if you can advance one more. Okay, so the revenues are based on our estimated demand, as I mentioned. So our purchased water total budget is about $32.7 million. And as Wes mentioned, it does make up about 72% of our budget. So for desal water, we do have a contract to purchase about 3,500 acre feet per year at an estimated cost of about $10 million. We have an agreement to purchase 2,750 acre feet from OMWD at about $3.7 million. And the remaining water that we need is made up of just the San Diego County Water Authority water, which would, in this case, would be 9,200 acre feet for a total cost of $13 million. And last meeting, Director Elithart, you mentioned about the additional desal water we get. So Wes, if you can advance one more. And I'm going to have you actually toggle back in a second. So that 90, actually, Wes, if you can circle over the 8740 and the 460 right there. So that's that 9600 that was in the SDCWA. So any additional desal water we get would decrease the demand that we would need from the SDCWA water. But you'll notice that the price per acre foot for the additional desal is the same as the price of water that we would get from the county water authority. So it's the treated water rate. So the total demand or the total supplied would still be the 15,450 acre feet, and it wouldn't change the overall cost of the $32.7 million. And I think that's it on the water. Are there any questions? The sewer one's going to be very simple. We'll go to sewer, and then if there's any questions, we'll go ahead and.
Hey, Mike, sorry. We do have a hand up in the audience. Glenn, if you can activate Miss Martin's microphone before we move on to sewer, that way we can address any water questions you might have.
Yeah, go ahead, Miss Martin.
Yes, if we could go back to the slide that is showing the projected water rate increases, please. I'm very curious to find out when you say the water will increase in 23, the sewer will increase, but the overall is not adding the 3.5 and the 2.5. I don't understand how the overall is lower than, how does it work if you're having an increase in the water rate and the sewer rate, that the overall rate is low?
I will attempt to do that without trying to confuse people with math. I'm a math nerd, a geek, so I love this stuff. But just to say, for example, your water bill is $50 and your sewer bill is $50. It's 3.5% on the water portion and 2.5% on the sewer portion. So it's a prorated share, so you can't add them. It's a proration of that. And I don't know if I'm making that clear enough or I'm still speaking too geeky, but the overall increase would be about 3.2% because of the allocation of your bill to water versus the allocation of your bill to sewer.
So give me an example, please. If my water bill normally is $50 and my sewer bill normally is $50, if I have a 3.5% increase in my water, what is my water going to be?
So on a 3.5% increase on $50, it'd be $1.75.
And on my sewer, it would be
If it's 2.5, it would be $1.25.
$1.25.
So quickly, I'll do the math. You'd add the 175 and the $1.25, $3.
And that,
Glenn, help me. $3, right?
Yep,
$3. 3%.
So the $3 then, and your total bill was 50 water, 50 sewer, it'd be $100. You take that $3 divided by the 100 and you get 3%. Now it doesn't match these numbers right here because the allocation between water and sewer is different on an average bill.
So my bill would go up $3 a month.
In that scenario, correct.
And the $3 on my $100 bill,
3%.
how much of an increase is that on my bill?
3%.
3%.
That is 3%.
Correct.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And when I joined the board 7 years ago, I had the exact same question, and and I remember asking it as well. So I completely understand when I saw the numbers the way that they look here. And again, Mike, sorry, before we move on, Director Ellithorpe, you have your hand up. Is that from before, or do you have a new question?
I have a new question, President Snow.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, on the water sales sensitivity, I'm wondering can you tell me what percentage of fixed costs are covered by fixed revenues?
So theoretically, when you do a cost of service study, all of your fixed costs should be covered by fixed revenue. So our fixed costs would be, basically the other 20. If you consider our variable costs of 72% of purchase water, then the rest of the costs are about 28%. So you have 28% of your expenditures, 31% of your revenue.
Yes, I'm not tracking.
What, can you clarify your question, Director Elitharp? So you're trying to figure out how much of our fixed costs is being covered by our fixed revenue,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I don't think it's 100%.
It'll be close to 100%. I don't know that it'll ever be exactly 100%. Mike, is there anything else you have that can help address that issue?
Not at the moment. I can do some research and get back to you.
Well, and one thing that'll help will be the cost of service study when we start
Right.
to talk about that, because what you'll
Yeah.
see is that you'll see the fixed costs from the water authority being included in our ready to serve charge, as well as the district's fixed costs. So in theory, we should be collecting more than just the water authority's fixed costs in ready to serve. Some of them are our own fixed costs as well.
Yeah, I think fixed and variable costs and revenues are in the eye of the beholder. So it would take, I think, a detailed look at what you're assuming are fixed and variable.
Correct.
Yeah, and
So
when
yeah,
we do,
I look forward to maybe a deeper analysis on that with a cost of service study.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Director Elitharp, I think that's the right time. We'll get into real depth with that. And as we venture forward on the rate setting process, that's one of the fundamental questions. You're trying to put all of your costs into certain categories, and ultimately it comes down to fixed versus variable. So you can put it into either the ready to serve charge or the commodity based tier structure we have. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and it also points to the insulation of the budget against water sales variability.
Right.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So
Director,
am I tracking appropriately that we have about a 7% gap there then, because we are ready to serve costs is 31%. And I think someone mentioned 38% is what,
It's
you know,
28%.
oh, 28%.
Non-water.
Okay.
And again, a lot of it, as Director Elitharp mentioned, is what is your definition of a fixed cost? There are so many different accounting definitions and things like that. So we will get back to you on that, especially when we do the cost of service study.
okay. Director Hernandez?
Yes, would you go back to the slide relative to the where we purchase our water? The question I have is, can we purchase more water from Olevenheim at a lesser rate than we are purchasing from the water authority?
Yes, we can, and yes, we do. We have on this chart, it's the contractual amount because this is the amount that we have to purchase. So at times there are years that we've purchased like 3,200 acre feet, 3,300 acre feet from OMWD, and we do realize those savings.
yeah. So I think the budget tries to be conservative and it shows the worst case. Like Mike said, if Olevenheim has the contractual ability to limit us to 2,750 acre feet per year, so then we increase the amount from a budgetary purpose or perspective that we think we would buy from the county water authority, which is more expensive. In reality, we usually buy more than 2,750 from OMWD. So our kind of melded water purchase cost is lower because of that, but we can't count on it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mike, thank you for
Okay.
the pot.
So
Thank you
the
for the pot.
last,
Oh, just go ahead.
the last slide is on the sewer revenues. So total revenues are about $21.1 million, and it's made up of the sewer service charges of 17.8, reclaimed water sales of about $3 million, and other revenue of about 317,000. So that concludes my presentation. And if there's any other questions on any of it, I'd be happy to answer.
I guess the only question I have, and thank you to Wes and Mike and Glenn and everybody who's been involved with this, and Director Boyd Hodgson for all your effort on the Finance Committee. I know a lot of time and effort's gone into it by many people. Do we? I know we benchmark like our water rates and our ready to serve cost with just to kind of see how we compare in the region with other districts. And I definitely want to see a kind of updated information on that as we get into the cost of service study and move forward there. But and I don't know if you can really get an apples to apples comparison from a budgetary standpoint, but are there any like-sized both water and wastewater agencies in our region that roughly serve the same number of customers or perhaps provide a similar amount of millions per gallons of water that we can just kind of compare ourselves against. I know, again, it's not going to be a perfect science. It's not going to be perfectly apples to apples, but is there anything out there that we can just kind of get kind of a gauge, kind of a sense?
Yeah, I haven't been able to find an agency that's like us in all the ways that are important. We can find water agencies that are close to us in terms of sales or number of connections. We can find wastewater agencies that are about the same size in terms of either connections or miles of pipe. But I haven't found an agency that's very similar to us in all aspects. And some of the ag, you may find an ag industry or ag agency that has about the same amount of water sales, but they have way less connections. So it's really hard to get an apples to apples comparison on these things. And be happy to continue the dialogue and try to identify agencies. And maybe it doesn't have to be the same agency for water and sewer. We can find one that's closest in water, one that's closest in sewer, and try to amalgamate the results.
Okay. Yeah. If don't spend too much time on it, but if you happen to come across something, I'd for one appreciate just kind of seeing how it stacks up. Where the rubber meets the road for our customers is their water bills at the end of the day. And so I think as long as we're benchmarking and looking at how we compare with other agencies with regards to what we charge for water and what we charge for the fixed cost, the ready to serve cost, I think that's really what's most important to the customers. And I'm glad that we do that. I would like I said earlier, I would like to get an update on that. At least traditionally, since I've been on the board, if I recall correctly, we've been in the bottom third or near the bottom third of all the different agencies in the county, which is a good spot that I personally like to be in. The lower, the better. but I understand that we have some other investments like the building the pipeline for desal that other agencies may not have taken on. But I like being down there towards the bottom third when we're comparing ourselves. So if we're starting to creep up in the following years, that looks like we're trying to provide a budget this year with no rate increase, which is great. But if we're starting to creep up where we're no longer in the bottom third, then I really think we need to take that analysis to the next level and see how we look budget to budget and where other agencies might be doing things more efficiently or different than us that perhaps we could learn from. Not saying that there are opportunities out there, but it's worth looking into to make sure that we're continuously analyzing our efforts to ensure that we're being as efficient as we possibly can. And then any other board comments at this time? I do have a hand from the audience. We'll go ahead and have Michael Hunsaker speak again, and then we can come back one last time I'll check in with my colleagues.
Go ahead, Mr. Hunsaker.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. I noticed one of the aspects is improving your data management system. And we have considerable serious attacks with ransomware and other attacks, our infrastructure. And it's a very big balancing act to keep the pipeline water under control. And if we have a disruption for a day or two, that can be quite disastrous from a control standpoint. So do we have a ransomware recovery plan in place to make sure that if something strikes that we can recover almost immediately within 24 hours? Other question I have is that I'm looking at figures of construction for commercial existing, for schools and such. And they're having an inflation of 1.5% per month. And we're seeing annual inflation rates for materials going up around 50%. And the dollar has inflated and it's lost 10% of its value on the world's market. So have these factors been incorporated, or are we still going on as if everything is going 1 or 2% per year. Thirdly, the cost of desal water, if I remember correctly, has a escalator for utility costs, which is above and beyond the nominal sales price of the water. And with the current green power push, those utility costs for desalinated water could explode well above 5% a year. So what sort of inflation rate do you really realistically look at in the coming years, considering that all the figures I'm seeing when everyone else has high inflation for the foreseeable future? And that'll be enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker. Glenn, do you want to maybe take a couple minutes just to answer some questions, at least at a high level, if you're not able to, if you don't have the detail off the top of your head?
I'll try. So on the first issue was about cybersecurity and data backup. So we've recently undergone a Department of Homeland Security vulnerability assessment for our all of our kind of SCADA systems. We're very worried about it. We're not very worried that we're ready, but we're very worried about the hackers that are out there. I think we're in a good position. We do back up our data in multiple locations. So if they tapped into one system, I'm confident that we'd have backup data. But I'm sure the agencies that have been a victim of cybersecurity or theft, they thought they were too. So we'll be vigilant on that issue. I'll continue to talk with our IT supervisor to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure our systems are as secure as possible. The second issue, construction costs are clearly going up. I wouldn't say we've done a detailed analysis trying to track all the trends, but our engineering group does look at most recent bids. So they keep track of the bid market, and they use that data to reflect going forward what we think projects will cost to construct. So in every budget cycle, we'll make adjustments to the CIP sheets that will reflect the history and where we think things are going. Desal, the last issue, he's right, and Mr. Hunsaker's correct that there is a component of the desal rate that includes escalators for electricity costs. I don't know that anybody knows where that electricity market will go. We look to the Water Authority. The contract for desal water is between them and Poseidon, and we just kind of tag along with that. I'm comfortable that the Water Authority's looked into that issue, and they're doing the best that they can to keep those prices as reasonable as possible. The good thing about desal, although it's expensive, it does help us with our County Water Authority fixed costs. County Water Authority allocates its fixed costs based on how much water you buy of water the Water Authority has to import. And our desal supply doesn't count towards that. So we get reduced fixed charges because of that, although the water price is expensive. So at a high level, that's probably all I think I'm prepared to say right now.
Okay, thank you, General Manager Prum.
You're welcome.
Okay, before we entertain any motions, I would just like to open it up to my colleagues one more time. Director Ellithart.
I'm not sure, Wes, were you done with your portion?
No, we still have a few other items to go through.
My apologies.
That's okay. So yeah, the next area we want to venture into is our CIP budget for fiscal year 2022 and beyond. And as we mentioned, we're only approving a one-year budget. So the CIP budget for fiscal year 2022 is $25.5 million, or 27% of the total budget. And the 10-year plan for CIP is $134 million. So I want to look at how that compares to the previous year and what it's made up of. So this slide shows a summary of page 34 of the budget with the 10-year CIP. And you can see the total 10-year CIP is 134.5, and that's made up of carryover projects of $52.5 million, and carryover projects are just projects that were budgeted for in previous years and haven't been completed yet, so they're carried over into this fiscal year. And it's made up of new CIP requests, and those new CIP requests can be for carryover projects, adjustments to carryover projects, or for new CIP projects. And it also is made up of future CIP requests. And future CIP are projects that will not be worked on in fiscal year 2022, but will be worked on in the 5-year plan, 5-year and 10-year plan, and are included for prudent financial planning purposes. So next we see we've budgeted $662,000 for vehicles and equipment, and this is detailed on page 114 of your budget. And it's down from $882,000 in the previous fiscal year. And overall, the total CIP is budgeted to decrease by $10.7 million. And the main reason for that is because we have a decrease in the budgeted new CIP requests of $25.6 million. Next, I want to look at how CIP is spread over the 5-year and 10-year plan. And this slide shows the capital improvement projects over the 5 years broken down by water and sewer. And we can see that the $25.5 million is made up and here in 21-22 of $7.3 million in water projects and $18.2 million in sewer projects. And of the 18.2, about $5.4 million are for Encino Wastewater Authority projects. And then up here on the top right, we can see the total 10-year plan, $134.5 million in projects is made up of $34.1 million for water and $100.4 for sewer. And of that 100.4, $33.1 million are for Encino projects. So that's a total of 5-year and CIP, 5-year and 10-year CIP plan. Next, we're going to look at the CalPERS UAL funding policy. And at the May 19th board meeting, staff was given clear direction by the board to pay off the remaining estimated $3.5 million balance over the next 2 years at the discretion of the board, with $2.6 million being funded in fiscal year 2022. And per the policy, we will give annual policy revisions when new actuarial reports are released, and we will include those in the next budget as well. We will always maintain flexibility. We're never going to lock into any formal arrangements with CalPERS unless directed by the board. And we will avoid overpaying. So we'll reassess the balance in every budget year to make sure we don't overpay or become superfunded. And finally, we will provide regular updates to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Directors. And with that, we'll look at the CalPERS UAL funding policy, which is included in the recommended budget just after the transmittal letter. And here you can see on the table, we have budgeted for an additional discretionary payment in fiscal year 2022 of $2.6 million, with the remaining $923,000 to be paid in fiscal year 2023 at the discretion of the board. It's also important to note that this shows a required payment on the UL of $1.1 million. The reason this looks funny because it's actually higher than the 2022, and you'd think if we're paying it down, it should decrease. The reason that it's higher is because this is the latest information we have from CalPERS, and it comes from the fiscal year 2019 actuarial evaluation. They haven't given us an estimate for years beyond that, and the 2019 does not include the $4 million payment that we made in 2021. So after we make the $2.6 million payment, they will give us an updated number. After they send us a letter and tell us, here's your new required payment for 2023. Once we have that, this number will go down to, we expect somewhere around $700,000. And then finally, the approximate interest savings from pre-funding the CalPERS UAL is going, the $3.5 million is actually a interest savings of $2.7 million. And this is significant, and it doesn't, I mean, this is significant considering it's $3.5 million, but I really want to break out the total savings from pre-funding the UAL. So if we take a look at that, by paying $8 million in fiscal year 2020, we were able to save an estimated $10.8 million. And that's because we paid off expensive bases that had 30-year lives and we're actually at 7%, and some of them were ramping. So $10.8 million saved in 2020. By paying $4 million in 2021, we were able to save an additional $4.2 million in interest savings. And finally, by paying the remaining 3.5 in fiscal year 2022 and 23, we will save the $2.7 million for a total interest savings of approximately $17,739,376. This is a huge savings to the district's customers and ratepayers. And I just can't stress enough how big this initiative was, and we're hopefully coming to the end of it, but it's pretty impressive, and I'm proud to have undertaken it with everybody else. So next, now that we've talked about all the operating expenses, salaries and benefits, and all the CIP costs, this all rolls up into reserves. And at the last meeting, I gave a lot of details on reserves. I'll try to summarize it more in this meeting. And this next slide shows the total reserves from 2015 through 2020 actual reserves and projected for fiscal year 21 and 22. Now, it's important to note that these are total reserve balances, so these include the capacity funds as well. So if we're looking from 2015 to 2020, reserve balances were increasing. They dipped a little in 21, and that's as a result of major projects such as the San Marcos Interceptor. but then we're budgeting for them to increase in 2022. And that's as a result of the debt proceeds we expect to come in this fiscal year. So the next slide, this shows the total replacement reserves. And we're showing this separately because this is what we base our rates on, or the replacement reserves. This does not include the capacity reserves, so the balances are going to be a little bit different. But as you know, the floor is made up for the replacement policy or reserve policy is made up of 3 years of replacement of existing infrastructure plus 6 months of operating expenses. And the ceiling is made up of 8 years for sewer and 10 years for water replacement of existing infrastructure plus 6 months of operating expenses. And since we're only budgeting or approving a budget for 1 year here, we can see the budgeted balance for reserves for fiscal year 2022 is $87 million. By the time we get to 2026, because of some large projects we have, especially in sewer, that balance is projected to be down to $77 million, but it's still above the floor of $54 million and within policy limits. So next, I want to take a look at days in cash. And for those of you that aren't familiar with days in cash, we track this ratio or criteria because it's a major criteria or one of the many criteria considered by rating agencies, along with debt service coverage, sufficient reserve levels, management capacity, the board's willingness to raise rates, and other criteria that they consider, such as like revenue defensibility as well. But they do look at days in cash, and it is important. So looking at this, we can see the orange line is the Fitch AA. It's a median for the Fitch AA rating for the water and sewer industry. And that's at 545 days in cash. And we are budgeted to be at 578 for fiscal year 2022. By 2026, that's projected to be down to 432 days in cash. But based on discussion with Fitch and and looking at our other criteria of the district, we believe that's sufficient to maintain our credit rating. And I kind of wanted to go through the history of the credit rating real quick. We were AA rated from 2005 through 2013 when we were upgraded to AA plus. And we've consistently been upgrade or maintained that AA plus through the future surveillance. And we've recently been maintained it again in 2020 at the AA plus in the most recent surveillance in August 2020. And this is something we'll be doing again through the debt issuance process. Fitch, Standard & Poor's, we'll be looking at our AA plus rating and hopefully reaffirming that. So with that, staff believes that our overall revenues and rates are sufficient to maintain our reserve levels, our debt service coverage, and our days in cash in order to maintain our rating. And staff recommends that we approve the Vallecitos Water District CalPERS unfunded accrued liability funding policy and approve the recommended fiscal year 2022 budget, which reflects the CalPERS UAL funding policy.
Hey, Wes, real quick before we turn it over to the board, you may want to point out that we did include graphs in the budget for the reserve levels.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot about that. So per the request of one of the board members, we have actually expanded the budget and included 2 new pages. On pages 123 and 124 of your budget, we've included reserve graphs for both water and sewer. And we have replacement and total graphs for each one. These are 2 new pages. You're welcome.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay, thank you, Wes. I have another question from the audience, Michael Hunsaker. We can turn him on.
Go ahead, Mr. Hunsaker.
Just a quick question. The days of cash, are you on a cash basis of what cash accounts you have, or are you on an accrual system? Thank you.
Thank you.
Both our budget and our financial statements are done on an accrual basis.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wes. And I will turn it over to any questions or further discussion that the board has. I see Director Elithart.
Thanks, President Snow. I don't know who this is for, maybe Wes or maybe Mike, but I think it was in the May presentation, you showed a water loss or unaccounted for water figure of, I think it was 7%. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
Yeah, so, AWWA recommends water loss or unaccounted for water be in the range of like 5 to 10%, but I think that's a pretty old standard, and I think 7% is kind of getting up there. And I was wondering, is this the reason that you're adding or enhancing a meter replacement program? I think, Wes, I think at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned there was an addition to the budget related to meter replacement.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that's a reason that we're considering it. I'd say it's one of the many reasons. We've been looking at the age of our meters and the need to replace them, and we've been replacing them sort of, in response to meters failing. So we felt like at this point we've got enough meters that are old, so it'd be better to be proactive, and it will definitely help, or at least it should definitely help with the water loss issue.
Yeah, I would say, probably a more modern goal is probably in the 4 to 5% range. And I think with a robust meter replacement program, particularly with large meters that, that are at risk at large revenue losses, if they fail or slow down. And also the use of AMR and AMI technologies, I think in recent years has really cut water loss. So I'd like to see us as an organization really push a robust meter replacement program as well as use of these technologies.
So yeah, and we met the new meter services supervisor, and he brings with him some excellent knowledge from other agencies. He's very experienced, and it was actually his sort of initiative. We discussed it prior to that, but it's his initiative to do the proactive meter replacement program. And he's recommending, pulling meters all year and testing them. And we are fully AMR, so all of our meters are, automated. They're not manually read. But with that initiative, I think it will improve the water loss.
Thank you.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, President Snella. Congratulations, Wes. Congratulations to the Finance Committee. I think this is a comprehensive budget. I want to go back to the account analyst position. I feel like that it was presented in a budget meeting or in a public meeting, and then it was removed without any discussion, at least that I was a part of. I was in favor of that position, and I'd like to ask how much that would add to the budget.
Yeah, we had, I think it may have been at the May 19th meeting, we had a chart that showed the salaries and benefits with and without both the AGM position and the accounts analyst. So Wes, if you can, I think you're looking for it right now.
Yeah, I'm looking for it now. We did present it. We did the cost of both salaries and benefits fully burdened. And I just don't want to guess. I know that I have the presentation here somewhere.
Hey,
I think in absence of being told that it was removed, I assumed that it was in the budgets going forward. And perhaps shame on me for not proofreading budget to budget, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation. So
Yeah.
how much would it have added?
So the fully burdened cost of the accounts analyst was $82,000, and that was demonstrated, but we never actually included it in the budget. We just showed, because the request, I believe, was to see what the salaries and benefits would be with and without the AGM and with and without the accounts analyst. So we showed that analysis, but we never actually included it.
Okay, I think it is reasonable if a board member expresses interest or favorability about something to be included, that if it's not going to be included, that's explicit, first of all. It's disappointing that it's not included given the importance of that role and the potential for us to what could happen if we don't have that role. But I do think that this is a sound budget. I'm very impressed with what you've done and put it together, but I just wanted to be on the record that I'm disappointed that that's not in there. And I feel like I've been surprised that it's not in there.
If I can kind of piggyback a little bit on that, I don't recall us having it in there initially, but I also don't recall us having an in-depth discussion about it after Director Boyd Hodgson had expressed an interest. And I can certainly see from staff's perspective that perhaps it kind of came up on you kind of quick, and maybe you haven't had a chance to really analyze the role of the position or what it might look like, or putting together the full scope of a job description for that position. But if there was some sort of compromise where we funded it in this budget for the last 6 months of the fiscal year, would that give staff enough time to achieve that?
Yeah, I think it would. We've just kind of barely started the process. We're, obviously going through the putting the budget together, but when that's done, we can start looking at that workload. 6 months would be plenty of time to do that, I believe.
So
I think I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I guess what without talking about what we talk about in closed session, I think that I don't want to wait another year, which I thought I heard was going to be sort of the next step to sort of study and analyze if it's possible, what that person would do. I don't want to wait, and I don't want another year to go by without the function of that role being performed. I think that would be detrimental to the district, and in the long run would cost us much more than $82,000.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave the board with the impression that no work would be done towards that end. I think I did mention that we would use existing staff to start to analyze that and better scope it. And part of that scoping would be to identify the magnitude of the issue, which is the accounts that are overdriving, for example, their purchase capacity. We do have some capacity to staff capacity to look into that issue, but it would take a full-time position to really look at it in depth. But I was reluctant to include it in the recommended budget because we hadn't scoped it. I would never typically wouldn't take a position forward on if I wasn't convinced that we needed it at that point in time. And I apologize if there was any lack of clarity, but I thought we were clear at the last meeting that we were including the AGM, and we mentioned the number of positions, and there was only a difference of one. So I guess I maybe just assumed that putting those two together, that we're adding one position and we were funding the AGM, that it was clear that the accounts analyst was not included in the recommended budget. But apparently we could have been clearer on that.
President Sinella?
Yeah, Director Hernandez?
Well, if it within the next 6 months, we identify what the scope of the project is and what the scope of the employment would be, can't we amend the budget to add it in at that time?
I don't know if that was directed to me, Director Hernandez, but we could certainly do that. We can come back with, I'd hate to call it a mid-year budget adjustment, but we can come forward at some point in time in the future and have the board consider what the scope of the duties would be, the cost, the budgetary impacts, and all of those things at that point in time.
Well, I think that's a reasonable ask, and when you have the information, bring it back and we'll address it at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that too, Director Hernandez, but I also think that we're talking about, $41,000 if we look at the final 6 months. I think what we may find after we get halfway into our budget season is that maybe we buy more water from Olivia Hain than we had budgeted for. So there's going to be some savings there. We typically are a little bit, under budget. So is 41,000, is it really unreasonable to think that we couldn't find it? If we added the position now, that we couldn't find that 41,000 6 months from now, somewhere within the budget? Is that even appropriate to do it that way?
Well, if I heard correctly, we really don't know what the person's supposed to do. So adding this position right now would seem to be overkill, because the person's going to stand around while we're all figuring out what their individual is supposed to be doing.
No. That's not what I was proposing as kind of an alternative. It was more of to budget the position for the final 6 months of the fiscal year, and then that would give staff time to analyze the role, generate a job description and an employment scope, and maybe even come back and say after further analysis that they're going to recommend against it, and then the board can make a decision. Or they come back and say, this is what the role is going to do, this is what the position is going to attempt to achieve for us, et cetera, et cetera. So, but by only budgeting it for the final 6 months, like similar to how we're only budgeting the AGM position for the final 9 months of the year because it's going to take some time. I think that kind of serves as a win-win where we get this important position, but we also give staff an appropriate amount of time to ramp up into it.
So if I may add too, we may be able to look at it after 6 months and say, we can just bring it to the board for approval of the funding for it. And we may at that time be able to say, we've got savings in certain areas anyway. So if the board would like to approve funding for the position and it's only 41,000, it's similar to like with CIP projects where they do a budget adjustment that's brought to the board later on. So it's not really something that we have to address right now. We could always bring it forward in 6 months when we've done the analysis on the position.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that if my colleagues are.
Yeah, I am too.
Yep.
Okay, and Director Ellisthorpe, is that a new hand?
I just wanted to say I support Wes's idea of bringing it forward in that manner. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we have some consensus there. Any other comments on that matter or anything else within the budget that was just presented?
Just anything else? Again, same remarks. I mean, I don't know what Wes and Mike are going to do now. You guys can take a break for a month because you guys have been working so hard on this for so long. Thank you. I mean, yeah, it's you guys have been working hard. I like the budget. Seems like you're fiscally responsible. We're not, just throwing money to the wind. Seems like, Glenn's done a great job in instilling that into us and that, yes, we got to be fiscally responsible. We're looking where we can cut. We're not overspending anywhere. We're keeping our benefits and payroll and everything else in line. I can understand a 2-3% increase. Nobody likes those, but it's understandable if your water bill goes up a few dollars over the next few years. I'm good with that. And I just thank you guys. You guys, I know you've been working hard, and I truly thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Super. And
President,
yeah, Director Hernandez.
I would also like to acknowledge the Finance Committee because I know that the committee, along with staff, have worked hard to reduce, particularly the capital projects, so that our budget is only just this small amount. So thank you both very much for your diligence. And with that, are we ready to make a motion?
We're just about there, but we have Ms. Martin who raised her hand.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, you have a future project of the El Norte Parkway Waterline Extension for $4.1 million. Do you know when that's going to happen and where that's going to happen?
James, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Ms. Martin, that's still a few years out. So that's a section of pipeline that's actually very important to us because it makes a connection to a different aqueduct on the potable water side from CWA. And there's a section that actually goes through a bunch of easements that need to be replaced. We're actually going to be doing it. It's a steel pipeline. We're actually going to be doing a pipeline assessment on that project because of the liability since it's adjacent to and underneath structures. And then from there on, we're going to redo the timing. So right now, Wes, I don't remember off the top of my head. I believe the timing's out. I'm trying to remember either 2023 or 2024 for real construction, maybe even 2025 by the time it's done. But once we do the assessment, we're going to either accelerate that because of priority or we'll push it back.
James, what portion of El Norte do you anticipate it impacting? El Norte is a very long street.
Yeah, it's closer to the 15 freeway. Basically, where Escondido and San Marcos, the border is. So it's that portion of El Norte. And it's just on this side. So it comes from Reedy Creek, comes across. And I know Ed's online. He'll probably know the street names better than I do. I just know it looking at a map. So
I think it's over by Nordall, if I'm thinking correctly.
Yeah, the beginning, if we extend that pipeline, would be at Greece and El Norte, going down to Woodland Parkway. So we'd be tying into the 24-inch down on Woodland Parkway. And the other part that James was talking about is from El Norte at Reese over to Rock Springs at Bennett. So that's where that section goes through there and is almost right underneath homes. So those are the two sections that we're looking at.
And we'll be showcasing the asset management and the pipeline assessment portion of that steel line once that is done to the committee and possibly to the board.
And James, it looks like the timing of that project, it's budgeted to begin in 24-25 as far as I believe the design, and construction might start around 25-26 and beyond.
Yep, and based on the assessment, we'll either accelerate it or it'll probably stay in that time frame.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Director Oliver, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to commend staff as well for the outstanding job on this budget, and the Finance Committee as well for the great job during this process. And I'd like to move staff's recommendation to approve the budget, including the CalPERS unfunded liability funding policy.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Director Elitharp to approve staff's recommendations. And we have a second by Director Hernandez. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote. Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Elitharp.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes. Good job, everyone.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item 3.2, a resolution declaring intent to reimburse certain expenditures with one or more issuances of tax-exempt obligations.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, making sure my microphone's on. Yeah, so this item is an important step in the financing of certain capital improvements in order to access tax-exempt bond proceeds. We have to declare certain projects are eligible. The board may have heard this term inducement resolution related to this topic. The formal term is reimbursement resolution, but for all practical purposes, they're the same and can be used synonymously. So Wes will walk you through this item. So go ahead, Wes.
So this is the moment we've all been waiting for. I know it's been discussed at several other meetings as far as creating a reimbursement resolution to show the intent to reimburse the reserves with debt proceeds. So this is a reimbursement resolution that includes all the projects on pages 34 and 35 of the budget. So now the approved budget, so that's a comprehensive project list. And this is just declaring the intent to reimburse any of those expenses that qualify with future debt proceeds. And with that, staff's recommending adopting the resolution.
Yep. Any questions or discussion at this time? And I do see a hand up from Miss Martin, but I don't remember if it ever went down from before.
Would you like me to enable her mic?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Miss Martin.
Yes, thank you very much for your hard work on the budget. And I'm looking forward to your considerable diligence also on the capital improvement projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any board discussion on item 3.2, or is there a, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move to approve, Hernandez.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the adoption of the resolution by Director Hernandez and a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. And if there's no other discussion, we'll do a roll call. Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Elitharp.
Yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 3.3, adoption of resolution ordering the annexation of certain property designated as North Coast Church.
Yeah, and James Gumpel will handle this item.
Thank you, President Snow, members of the board. I'll try to make it brief because I know you guys have sat through 2 long presentations. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you could see the exhibit, which is on page 530 of your board packet. So this is a sewer-only annexation. It's located over there in the Montiel area, basically east of Nordahl, and basically east of the Costco, east of Nordahl, and it's actually in the city of Escondido, but it's in the district's water service area. I'm sorry, sewer service area and water service area. So with this, the annexation fees are basically a buy-in fee to the system. So when a property that's outside of our system comes in, they have to buy into our existing infrastructure and the investments that's been made. And there's a buy-in fee, which is our annexation fee. The actual conditions of annexations were approved by the board back on March 18th of 2020 at the board meeting. And now this is basically the finalization. The owner and participant has now met all the conditions, and they are moving forward and asking for board authorization today. There will be additional fees that will be, for example, cap fees that we'll still collect on the project when we go through the plan check process and we basically evaluate the final project that they're building. Those fees aren't listed here at this time, but they will be coming back to the board either through a construction agreement, most likely, or if they're construction facilities, or they'll come back as far as a project acceptance. With that, unless there's any questions, recommendations to adopt the resolution ordering the annexation of the 2 APNs for sewer improvement districts 5 and 6. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I see the first hand up was Director Hernandez.
What's the total amount of the annexation fees?
Sure, it's our sewer annexation fees total amount is $26,357.92. Basically, there's 2.57 acres, and the annexation fee is a per acre charge of, let me get the number right here, $10,256 per acre.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I have a kind of a question, James, that's a little bit off topic, but so you're looking at roughly $26,000 to annex into our district. How do you do the cap fees on a church? I know how we do them on residential development, but how do we do them on something like that?
So it's not that hard. It's for churches, schools, and other facilities like that. We find out the seat count and the fixture count, the uniform plumbing code. There's a calculation that's done on it based on the amount of facilities they have, so we can figure out the water demand. Of course, they're probably going to have irrigation also, and then the amount of sewer demand based on maximum occupancy. So those numbers are fairly well known. Once they come in and figure out the actual size, the amount of facilities they have, some churches have banquet facilities or wedding facilities on top of their normal congregation facilities. Then their engineer will do the calculations based on the uniform plumbing code, which gives us basically a water demand and sewer generation demand. We check it against our numbers, and then we calculate cap fees based on that.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
What have they been doing up to now, and where do they get their service now?
They're actually developing the lot. So right now there's there may be a house in the corner, I believe, but basically it's mainly an empty lot.
Aren't they there now? Is there not a church on that location?
No, I think they're expanding it because that's where they're going to be doing. That's why they're going to be coming for plan check, and we don't know the actual size of the development at this point.
Gotcha. So where they're at now, their current location, I know they're expanding, but.
Sorry, Director Panic, I think you froze on us.
Yeah.
Oh, he's coming back.
Oh, was that me?
Yeah, you froze.
We lost you.
Oh, are they a current customer now at their current? I know they're expanding, but where they're current.
They're not a current sewer customer now. They're not in our sewer district. I could double check on the water. They may be in that area because it's spotty in that area. It's kind of at the edge of our district, but they're not a current sewer customer right now. So if they may have a small facility and a grandfather and septic system, and with the expansion, that's not going to work. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I'm guessing.
Gotcha. Okay, and they're requesting this, right?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution if there is one.
Motion, motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and adopt the resolution by Director Pinnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Pinnick,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to item 3.4, the Aqua Region 10 Nominating Committee seeking Region 10 board candidates. This is, I feel like this is on our agenda every meeting.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so this, at the board meeting back on May 19th, Director Hernandez expressed his interest in serving on the Aqua Region 10 board. And the expression of interest requires a nomination packet and a resolution of support from the interested candidates governing board. And this item is on the agenda as a resolution of support for Director Hernandez. That's all it is.
Do any of us even like Director Hernandez?
I do. I think he's pretty cool.
Okay.
That's besides the point.
Okay. Well, okay. Well,
I'd move staff's recommendation to adopt.
Okay. Is there I'll second it. And so there's a motion to move staff's recommendation and a second by Director Elithart, and a second by Director Sanella. Since it kind of went down kind of quick and I was joking, is there any other questions, discussions? Okay, let's roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes. Good luck.
Director Pinnick.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Elithart.
Yes, and he is a good guy.
He is. Okay, and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Go forth, Jim.
Yeah.
Lead the way.
Doc, would you tell that to my wife?
I've been trying.
Okay, that ends our action items tonight. And we'll move on to reports. We'll start off with the general manager report.
Yeah, so thank you, President Sanella. Just wanted to report that the majority of the paving along San Marcos Boulevard in the vicinity of our San Marcos Sewer Interceptor project has been completed. All lanes of traffic are open and the pavement condition is in really good shape. There are still a few outstanding items. A slurry seal is going to be placed over some of the repaired section as well as some of the older sections that weren't addressed. So we'll slurry seal that, do some traffic striping, and I believe there's still a small amount of paver work to be done. But we're coordinating everything with the city. But if you've driven through there, it's in much better shape than it was in months past.
I would agree. I drive it every day, like probably most of us, and it's nicely improved. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Second item, so as we look towards reopening our admin facility to the public and resuming our in-person board and committee meetings, we always have to be mindful of the workplace restrictions that have been put in place due to COVID. And one of the most important set of restrictions that we've been dealing with are imposed by Cal OSHA, which is the California Occupational Safety and Health Administration Office. They address safety in the workplace, and having in-person meetings brings people into the workplace. And as the regulations stand right now, we would be very limited in our ability to resume normal operations. But tomorrow, Cal OSHA is having a meeting, and during that meeting, we're expecting that they'll determine new workplace rules. And I think those will be more favorable and will allow more things. So that's good. I had originally planned on agendizing an item on tonight's agenda to talk about returning in-person meetings. But when I found out about the Cal OSHA meeting, I didn't want to tell you tonight that there's an important meeting tomorrow. So we decided to defer our item until June 16th. So we'll monitor the regulations and what comes out of the Cal OSHA meeting tomorrow, and then package it up and bring it back to the board on June 16th for discussion. And last item I wanted to talk about was a financial audit. So every year the district undergoes a financial audit, and this is done by a third-party independent audit firm. And their job is to ensure that all the financial rules are being followed and the appropriate systems are in place to prevent fraud and any financial mismanagement in the workplace. I wanted to let the board know that the interim audit will begin on June 14th, and the more detailed field work associated with the audit will begin in September. And when the audit's done, we'll be bringing it back to the Finance Committee and to the full board. So those are the 3 items I had to talk about today, and that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, General Manager Prum. Mr. Gilpin?
Yeah, Glenn, General Manager Prum touched on this, but as he indicated, the Cal OSHA rules are supposed to come out tomorrow relative to the approval. We're anticipating that those are going to follow some of the requirements that have been outlined. I'd note for the board, and I can discuss this with June and Prum, that really your board meetings are not quote unquote a workplace, nor are board members employees under those regulations, but the regulations do include provisions to you basically as the employer ensuring that you maintain a safe environment for your employees. So it'll be interesting what they send out. The other thing, we're all anticipating the June 15th, I guess, rollback. One of the questions has been what effect that governor's actions will have on the executive order, which included the Brown Act waiver that allowed us to have these meetings. This afternoon, the governor issued a letter to a coalition of public agencies in response to a request of really what's the intent on the 15th relative to continuing these the provisions for these virtual meetings. And one of the things that came out of that letter is that he clarified that what's being rolled back is the blueprint for a safe economy, which is essentially rollback of the colored tiers as we've come to know them by each of the counties. They're not intending on the 15th to roll back the executive order provisions as they apply to public agencies. They understand that that'll take some additional time to work with the agencies. As I've reported in the past, there's some pending legislation regarding continuation of those Brown Act exceptions, et cetera. But long and the short of it there is there will be time for us to plan in how to proceed and deal with virtual meetings after the 15th. That's all I have to report this evening. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gopin. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to San Diego County Water Authority.
Thank you, President Snella. The board and its committees held its regular May board meeting on May 27th. The board adopted a resolution 2021-14 setting the time and place for a public hearing on June 24th during the Admin and Finance Committee meeting to receive comments regarding proposed rates and charges to be effective January 1st, 2022. The board also adopted an updated statement of debt management and disclosure policy. The board authorized the general manager to join San Diego Community Power for non-exempted meters at the power on rate schedule. The board adopted positions on various assembly and state Senate bills, and I would direct your attention to the CWA website for details on those. The board authorized the general manager to execute an annually renewing 5-year agreement with the County of San Diego in a total amount not to exceed $4.1 million to provide supplemental incentive funding to customers located in the jurisdiction of the county. And lastly, the board adopted Resolution 2021-15, approving the Water Authority's 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, its water shortage contingency plan, and Appendix M addendum to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, and to submit the documents to the state of California by July 1st in compliance with the Urban Water Management Planning Act. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Director Althart. Moving on to Encino Wastewater Authority. Director Hernandez, you want to do the honors, or would you like me?
Well, I would just start off with the Capital Improvement Committee. Will meet on June 16th. Mike, I believe you were the one that made the motion on the.
Yep. So the Policy and Finance Committee meets next week. We did have a full board that both Director Hernandez, full board meeting that Director Hernandez and I attended, and really the only action item that was discussed and then action taken was with regards to that Clean Energy Alliance tariff selection that I talked about at our last meeting. So I'm not going to go into it too much, but I did want to give an update that after much discussion by the full board of Encina, the board did decide to move forward with the Clean Energy Alliance at 100% tariff. And so it was not a unanimous vote, but it was but it did pass. And if you recall from my previous kind of discussion on this at the last meeting, essentially that'll provide Encina that remaining 15% of their energy needs now will be provided in a 100% renewable way, which will be good. And the cost impact on Encina and thus us, our portion, we'll have a portion of it is a little over $20,000. I think the majority of the board during the discussion felt that was a worthwhile expense to protect the environment. So that was that. And everything else was just kind of some basic housekeeping stuff. Moving on to standing committees. Did any of the committees meet? The Finance Committee has not met since we last met. Oh, I see some heads shaking no. Okay. Directors' reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars. Did anybody attend any meetings or conferences that they would like to share some information on? Director Hernandez?
Yes, I attended the Casa dinner. Well, the dinner because it's virtual. But and we heard from the nominees for the positions at Casa, and that was primarily the major portion of the meeting.
Okay, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, President Snella. Our last meeting, we voted that we were going to go all in and try to achieve platinum status in our transparency. So I got the first invitation to attend a training, the California Special Districts Association training. I attended that training. It was 3 hours, 2 days, and it opened my eyes. There's a lot of great resources on the California Special Districts Association website. They have a board handbook, they have a policy handbook, they have sample evaluations, and I'm looking forward to poking around and learning a little bit more about those resources, seeing how they compare to what we do, and where applicable, implementing some best practices.
Super. Any other meetings attended? Okay, I attended the CSDA meeting as well. And I did have a question, Gwen. I don't know if you have the answer, if you received any correspondence from CSDA on this, but when is that election and are we going to be able to weigh in on it?
I don't have that information right now. I'm sure I could access it and provide information to the board.
Okay, if you could, I'd appreciate it. Okay. We will move on to director's comments on future agenda items. I don't. Oh, Director Boyd Hodgson.
So you also remember our last public meeting. I foster puppies, and as it turns out, a puppy stepped on my power strip and like completely shut off the power to my whole setup. I didn't realize what had happened until then. I tried to reboot, and of course my computer needed to update, so I was not able to get back in. So what I was about to say for a future agendized item was Resolution 1450. I think that it's time to, especially now that we have issued debt, it's time to revisit that. There are a couple of provisions within that policy that assume that we have not issued debt, and I think it's important to revisit that. So I'm hoping that we can revisit that in July, or at our next meeting or sometime in July. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other agenda items or comments? Okay. Great, and I think that puts us at adjournment. So wonderful meeting. Thank you to everybody who participated in the public. Thank you to staff, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.